Here we go. This is episode maybe 17, I don't know, of the Right Good podcast. Quick shout out to our first ever sponsor, Serpent Brewing. Good friend of mine owns it, Glenn O'Keefe. He brews delicious beers. You just won't, it's hard to imagine how delicious these beers are.
It's going to be famous one day.
For sure.
Get onto it now.
Get onto it now. Buy into it now. Help them make this delicious beer so everyone can try it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Serpent
Yeah, Serpent Brewing.
Awesome.
So I'm joined here with Ali Sangster and Michelle Marshall, who are both lovely yoga teachers I've had the pleasure to study with for, off and on the last year or more,
about
a
a
little
year.
bit. At On The Mat, owned by Tori, who we've interviewed earlier in this podcast. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank
We're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
No problem. So I'll probably just start out with some probably obvious and simple questions, but I just wanted to hear a little bit about you guys' backstory and what you were doing before yoga and how did yoga show up and just walk us through that journey if you don't mind.
You want to go?
You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I played basketball, and I played basketball and soccer throughout my life, and then I played basketball until, through university, and, riddled with injury, but I loved the competitiveness of it, but eventually your body just kind of says, fuck off, really. And, so one day there was just an event in my life that had happened, and Tori and I actually went to the first yoga class together.
Nice.
And I kind of started to dabble in it a bit. Would go a little bit, but I wasn't sold. But something kept bringing me back. I was like, what is this? I want to keep going back. Like, I feel so good. Ooh, but I hate it. Like, when people are like, downward facing dog is a resting pose. I'm like, that's bullshit. This is not a resting pose. This is horrific.
Definitely
not. Right? But like, you'd be like, this is terrible. But then I would leave and there'd be something like lighter. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back. And then there was a moment in my life. It was actually, it was after I had my son. And I was at a yoga class, and so he's 8 now. And it was on Thanksgiving. Have I told you this story before?
Perhaps.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. And we had to stand across from a stranger.
Oh, yes.
Remember? We had to stand across. I don't know, maybe you were there. And you
Could
had
be.
to, I actually remember the poor soul who it was, this man. I remember his blue eyes. So we had to stand across from people and just stare at them and not speak. Really awkward, okay? So you stand and you look, and they were timing for like a minute. And then you go to the next person. And so I was doing what I did always. And in my life, I was really unhappy, and I was going through a lot of stuff. But I did what I did. I just kept going every day. Don't stop, just keep going and pretend like I'm okay. Like I wore like a mask. And so I stopped, and there was this man in front of me, and I always think, I'll remember his face forever. God love him. He's like part of my journey, whoever he is. And the person who was leading this, class said, I want everyone to stop and stop smiling. I'm like, oh gosh, okay. And just be still and let this person look into your eyes and see you for who you are and what's really happening.
Was it Ian Finn?
It wasn't Ian Finn.
Okay.
No, it wasn't.
Sounds like an Ian Finn.
It does, I know. And I stopped, and I just started crying. And I couldn't stop. Like, it was uncontrollable. I just couldn't stop crying. And imagine this man, like, poor him, he was like looking at me, and I was just heaving because I thought when I actually stopped and let somebody see who I was not okay. So I left. I just packed all my stuff up, and I just like ran out of the yoga studio. And I came home, and I'd been like telling everybody, I'm fine. And then that night I had like another night of like, panic attacks, whatever was happening in my life. And in the morning I called my mom, and I was like, I'm not okay. I need your help. And she's like, okay, I'm coming over. And she came, and we went, then my healing started, but that's when my relationship with yoga really started to happen. Like, that was kind of my healing journey, and letting myself just be still Like, what's really, because your mat is like your mirror. You're like, what is happening in my life? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't good, but I was just pretending, powering through, doing everything. Run, what am I going to do today? I'm anxious, I'm just going to run. I'm just going to keep running. And then I stopped. So that's a long answer. I'm sorry, but that's really...
Yeah, that's what we want.
Yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then, then I've been, it's been my medicine, really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
how
great.
it happened. Yeah.
Michelle?
I kind of started the yoga journey I was interested more on the spiritual side of it. So I had a child at a very young age. I have an awesome, amazing 24-year-old son who is the bomb.
He is the bomb.
So I got pregnant when I was 17, had him when I was 18, and his dad was like super abusive, right? And I just kind of had all this like stuff from when I was younger, sort of hanging on to stuff, right? And as you carry that through, there's moments of anger, there's resentments, there's all kinds of like, to put it loosely, I was like a hot mess. Let's put it that way, right? So like after I had Sheldon, and I went through what I was going through with his dad, there was a point where it was just like, can I curse? Is that
Yeah.
I think I've already done it accidentally.
Like,
it's okay.
Fuck, like what the fuck? Like I gotta get my shit together. I gotta figure out who I am. Like how do I be a good mom? Like I gotta like let this shit go. Like, right? And I just wasn't exactly sure how to do that, so I just started looking for things. Like I started going to Shambhala Center and going to meditation, and I started like just reading everything that I possibly could that I thought was, quote unquote spiritual or self-help or whatever, and that kind of led me to yoga. I was like, oh, spirituality and yoga, it's yoga. And I remember the very first class that I went to was like an Ashtanga class, and up there going like, holy shit, what the hell? Like physically it was like, I was like, oh my god, I can't do this. Like anyway, and then I was like you, and I just kept going back, and I just kept going back, and then I would leave it for a while, and then I would go back, and it was just something that was always there. And that's kind of like what led me to it. And it's just like, like Ali said, you just keep going back, and then you just start breaking down layers and
the layers,
the layers, yes,
the layers,
right? Yeah. And you just start breaking down layers and connecting with your authentic self, not who this person that you put your mask on. Right? We all have like 10 like masks or whatever. It's
absolutely
like just taking off one mask and another, and then you're just, each time you go, it's just like you're closer to your authentic self, and when that happens, you're able to connect with other people.
It's like a weight is lifted off you, really.
Yeah.
Because I think, people will be like, I need to go to yoga because I need to change. And you're like, or I need to, change who I am. But really, it is breaking down layer and layer and mask. And you're like, oh, here I am. Like, this is who I am.
Becoming who you are, actually.
Who you are. And just being okay with that. And it's messy, and it's okay. It's okay.
Right.
And I don't know if it's yoga and age a little bit too, maybe?
Well, age is definitely something to do with it.
Yeah.
But it's like you just get to this point where it's like, you're like, okay, I am okay.
Yeah.
When I get closer to finding out who I actually am. It's cool.
It's totally cool.
Who cares what other people think?
Yeah.
This is the best, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I realize, like, when I don't practice yoga and I come back and practice it, I'm like, oh, that's why, like people will come to you, and you probably had this, they apologize to you if they don't, they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been here in like 4 months, and I'm like, listen.
They're like a confession or something.
Oh, they are. And you're like, listen, it's always here waiting for you. Don't ever, like, it's always here. And it really is.
Completely,
yeah.
Right on.
Okay.
Those are both great.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit. I mean, there's a lot, but you talk about that phase of just starting to go to the first class or second class and then having it be just eye-opening, to say the least, and then feeling for some reason to keep going back with more frequency as time goes on. And you mentioned too, Ali, about something felt lighter after I was out. I find something peculiar about yoga as an exercise in that way, and that I would feel more energy after exerting myself in that way, like leaving that puddle of sweat on the floor, and then afterward it's like the best, cup of coffee anyone could ever dream of making. And I wonder if you guys could maybe delve into that a little deeper, and what do you think that is about yoga that just frees up that space inside?
Do you remember hearing in yoga classes a lot, like you'd be in like pigeon pose or hips, and people would say, this is all stored, all your attention is stored in your hips. But I remember being in pigeon pose early in my yoga journey and starting to cry. And
for sure.
Crying. And I just started crying. And I'm like, not even knowing what was sad. There was no trigger. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly, there was triggers. But at that point, I couldn't even name it. Mm-hmm. But all this, you start collecting your stories and your tension in your joints. Mm-hmm. And in all these parts of your body. So they've collected there. And you see it in people's bodies where they collect their tension. Mm-hmm. And when you start releasing that tension, it's not just on a physical level. It's so much deeper. And that is why people come back. Because, playing sports and doing all this other stuff, it feels good in a way, but it doesn't have that same, oh my gosh. Like people leave your class and they seem stoned sometimes. I leave yoga and I feel like stoned. I'm like, should I drive? I don't know. I feel like great. Like, what's going on right now? Mm-hmm. Right? But it's because, I don't know, it's on more than a physical level. Because it's you're storing all your shit.
There's that saying, we hold our issues in our tissues.
Yeah.
Right? It literally is more than just physical. You're storing all your junk in there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like everything you haven't worked through, all your unresolved BS, it's in there. It's just waiting to come out.
And even like if you're in like a warrior 2 for a really long time and you're still there and you're starting to get like you're like getting antsy and you're like, I hate this. I hate you for holding me here. Like, oh my God. But then it's right. But then it becomes like this is life. Okay. Yeah. I always think like, if you can't like hold a warrior 2, don't get married. Right? Like, This is it. Like, stay in your shit. Mm-hmm. Breathe through it, and then it's all gonna pass, right? Mm-hmm. Like it really is a mirror for what's really happening. You know?
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. It's very much a meditative and mindful practice as much as it is a physical practice.
Absolutely,
yeah. You're right. It's like you're in a warrior 2 or whatever, or even if you're in a yin pose, that creates a lot of sensations. Like, how are you gonna react to this right now? Mm-hmm. What's your choice going to be?
What's your go-to?
Are you going to freak out? Or are you going to panic?
You're going to leave?
Fidgeting?
You see people, they just leave. They're like, and I'm out, and I'm done, and I have, this is my go-to. I grab my water, I'm going to do this, or...
Happens on the roof, too.
Just
leave. Yeah.
People just leave.
Yeah.
Or there's the people who never give themselves a break, right? It's the same thing, and you must be like, okay, you're punishing yourself for something. Mm-hmm. It's okay to put your knee down. It's okay. Mm-hmm. And again, that's a metaphor for their life. Like, you don't need to have permission to do this. Like, give yourself a break, right?
We also live in a very young world,
absolutely,
right? Where people are they're very drawn to the young, or there's this like kind of glorification of being really busy, or like the new thing is the grind, like the grind. And I see all these things come up on my Instagram feed. It's 4:25 a.m. and I'm up working and I'm just grinding
You're
and hustling.
You're a hero if you do that.
And it's really just so glorified, right? And it's like, if you come back to like the Taoist philosophy of like yin and yang, and like how do you create harmony and balance, you need both of those things. And with any yoga practice, whether it be flow or whether it be something passive like yin, there's yin and yang in both practices. Like you can be in a warrior 2 or any other standing posture that might be, there's fire in your legs or whatever.
And find the yin
and find the softness in it, right? and just whether that
if
just
you don't, you
soften
burn
your
out.
thoughts.
It's like life.
Yeah.
You'll burn out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that with myself.